Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. So I'm happy to be with all of you on this call and share with you this product that you'll be using to assist you with your accessibility. Just as a quick intro, I am Mark with PopeTech. And so we've been helping organizations, especially in higher education, with their accessibility for the past 6 years now. And our Canvas dashboards and accessibility guide products that I'm going to show you are actually two of my favorite products, especially the accessibility guide. I really love it, how user-friendly it is and how it empowers users to find and fix content. So I'm going to be sharing that just kind of as a I don't know, maybe disclaimer. They're doing some weird construction thing on my road today. So if you hear a little bit of noise in the background, I apologize. Hopefully it doesn't come in on the recording. But if something doesn't come through or whatever, Jessica, maybe just drop something in the chat going like, hey, could you repeat that? You got drowned out by whatever it was. So I don't think it'll be an issue, but just in case. But excellent. Perfect. So we're going to go ahead and just jump in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on a lot of the formalities, but I do, just as a quick background before I get in, my background, I joined up with my brothers at PopeTech. PopeTech is owned by me and my brothers. I came from higher education, so I was a lecturer. So I was creating content, and one of my jokes is I'm doing my penance now for all the inaccessible content I created, helping other instructors and other people know and understand accessibility and how to make this content more accessible. I'm going to share with you two tools that work together. One of them first is the accessibility guide, and it's a single page checker that helps instructors find and fix issues right there in the rich text editor. Right. The second part of it is the reporting dashboards that go with that. So sort of my agenda today is I'm going to start with the guide and give you an overview of that and kind of chat about what that is. And then we'll open it up for some questions about the guide. And then we'll move into the dashboard and I'll cover that and we'll open it up for some questions about that. And then if we still have some time left, we'll loop back around to the guide. And we will, show some more examples of maybe finding and fixing a few issues and what they mean, and some things to get going on if you are using it. So some practical tips and a little bit of just a couple of items, some accessibility training on them, so to speak. Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and jump to that screen share there. I've got the screen share going. What I have here is my Canvas instance set up for PopeTech. Me and my brothers did grow up in Utah watching Utah Jazz. So let's say I'm an instructor editing this content here on this Utah Jazz history page, and I'm doing some work here. The first thing to be aware of is when I'm in edit mode, and so I do have to be in edit mode, which I am already in here. So I'll cancel out of this. So this is what the page is. If I'm in edit mode on the page and I were to scroll down to the bottom of the page, next to the save and cancel button would be the accessibility guide button. And this is the most common way that you and your instructors and content creators are going to be interacting with our accessibility tool here. And so the accessibility guide, we designed it to be an easy to use guide to be able to help flag accessibility issues, show where they're at, provide some training on why they matter for accessibility, as well as allow you the opportunity to fix it right there in the guide without leaving it and keep working on the accessibility. So before I get into some issues, if you noticed when I activated that button, it opened up a sidebar here on the side. At the top, it says accessibility, so you're aware of what we're working on. The yellow and red categories are errors and alerts. I'm going to talk about the categories in a second, but I'm just going to give a high overview, and then we'll go deeper into some of this stuff. Next, it breaks it down into different categories, as well as showing how many errors and alerts in each one, including things like images and links, text and contrast, headings, all the way down to this other category. The other category is is one where a lot of times errors will show up in there, or alerts, or things that were either something added by Canvas, or maybe you cut and paste some HTML code in there and it had errors in it. So these are ones that generally you can't be creating just by using the rich text editor. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first. Before we get into it, let's go ahead. I'm going to hit the Help Center. Help is always your friend. And so if I activate that help there, then it's going to have a link to the PopeTech documentation so you can read more about the products. There can be some customized documentation. In fact, in your LA instance, your district instance, there should be a link to a login portal for the LA district's additional accessibility resources that they've provided. I think you have to log in through a portal to get to that, but that link should be there as well too. And then if it's enabled, you're able to submit request tickets for your accessibility team there as well too. I did want to point out, we do have information on how to use the guide here. And so a lot of the information I'm covering right here, as well as what the different icons mean, are highlighted here. I do want to just underscore the idea of the PopeTech checker isn't just an accessibility checker. It's actually a suite of accessibility tools. And so obviously we're going to serve up, hey, here's red errors, things that can be detected in an automated way that's an error for sure. This is something you definitely need to go fix, right? But the yellow alerts are items that, hey, this is suspicious, likely an accessibility issue, but we can't tell for 100% certainty that it is one. There's some level of human judgment there. So these are ones that are likely issues that you need to review. And if it is an issue, fix it. And if you decide it's not an issue, you can choose to ignore it. So you don't always necessarily get all the alerts down to 0, but you should review all the alerts. Right. And so alerts are items for accessibility issues that do need to be reviewed. The other icons are ones that we serve up for additional accessibility testing. Remember how I said that we were a suite of accessibility tools. I'm going to show an example with alternative text in a minute, but even after an image has alternative text, we're still going to serve it up as a green icon here. And why is that? Well, that's so that you can go back later, because the alternative text on images, let's take this image right here, this Utah Jazz player Pistol Pete. If it had an alternative text, I can't see that anywhere on the page. And just because someone put alternative text doesn't mean it's good alternative text for accessibility. I didn't put it in this training, but in some trainings I do. I've got a picture of a cute pug dog with glasses and a scarf on it. And I've put the alternative text as kitten on it, right? Just because it has alternative text doesn't mean it's good for accessibility, right? And so, kitten, unless that dog's name's Kitten, that would not be good alternative text. So we'll continue to serve up things like your heading level and alternative text for you to manually check. And that's what I mean by we're a suite of accessibility tools, not just an accessibility error checker. So even after you've checked the errors and have moved on and reviewed the alerts, you still can do other things within those tools to check for accessibility. But generally, when I'm training new people, I say focus on the red errors first, then move to the yellow alerts. And then as you level up, check out the resources on how to dig deeper into these other areas here. And I'm giving a little bit more information. I know this is being recorded and shared, but we often do get a lot of support questions from people who are asking, hey, I still see images with alternative text or marked with, quote, decorative, which I'll share at the end of this call what that is. Why is that? And our answer is because we're a suite of tools. We want to continue to serve up what the alt text is that was put there so that you can later go back and easily see that and make sure you still think it's good. So a lot of times I see the first year people just adding alt text, but then their second year through going, or second time through some content, the next year they're looking at it going like, ooh, that alt text I wrote, if I were blind using a screen reader, isn't that good? I'm glad it's showing this so I can update it. Perfect. I'm going to go back and we're going to show how to navigate through this guide here in a second, but I will pause right now and let's field some of the questions before we jump into it, seeing if there's any of them.
I just want a clarification from Jose. Jose, you said I don't have that button. Can you let us know what button you're referring to? So one thing to note is you do have to be in edit mode to see the P, the PopeTech button. It should be installed in every college, so I would reach out to your college DE coordinator. It would also depend on which sub-account you're in, so I would say reach out to your college DE coordinator if you're not seeing it. It should be installed in every course.
Excellent. Any other questions that have come up on the different types of categories from the start before I move into showing how to navigate around the guide on these like 4 different colored icons? Again, red errors that need to be fixed. Alerts are issues likely for accessibility. And then you know, the blue and green are items there to provide some deeper in-depth ones, but are maybe not an issue at all. But I'm going to show you guys later on how I might be using the blue and green icons. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these issues.
Sorry, 1 second. We do have one hand up before you move on.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, what's the question?
So I was wondering, because I use a lot of documents and things like that. And so I always get the triangle that it's an alert that I need to review. And I do include the comment that the document is going to be downloading a Word document and not a link. In the future, is there going to be a way that we can check off that we've reviewed it and addressed it or something like that, just to kind of make the orange triangles go away?
Yeah, and that's a feature request we've heard coming in a lot recently. So it's definitely on our radar to look at the best way to do that and handle that. But we are thinking of how to do that. We are having discussions with organizations to see what they think would be the best flow of, you know, who's empowered and responsible for that. I have some places that are like, instructors don't know enough to check it off. Others are like, if the instructors aren't checking it off, it's too much for our accessibility and Canvas team to do. So we are discussing the best way to implement something like that, but we do have that on our roadmap. Great question. Thank you. But as of today, once you reviewed it, you can just feel free to just be like, hey, I've reviewed all those, and be comfortable moving on. In the web products, we always tell people, you know, that the goal isn't always to get yellow alerts down to 0. The goal is to just make sure you've reviewed them. But that's something that makes sense in here, and we are discussing the best way to implement that. So great question. Excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go through the accessibility guide here for a second, and then we'll move to questions again before we go to the dashboard. So let's say I'm an instructor going through here and I see these 4 errors, 56 alerts, and let's start tackling them. I'm going to take images. If I go into the images and links, I see there's 3 errors, 2 alerts. The red errors, remember, we're counting the red and yellow up here for that. The red errors would be missing alternative text. I activate that. It's actually going to show a thumbnail of that image. It's going to jump to that spot in the page of where it's at. We do try to put a quick little highlight focus on it of where the issue is. So you can see, okay, this is this image of Michael Jordan pushing off Byron. And so, you know, but it has no alternative text there. Now, if I were an instructor and I didn't know what alternative text was, we provide a little snippet right here that says, add alternative text that accurately and succinctly presents the content of the image. If I don't still know what that is, the question marks there that can open it up, that then provides me with additional information of what it means, why it matters, how to fix it, what success criteria it maps onto for the accessibility standards. And so they're able to dive deeper, as well as view on the second tab over some examples. For example, here on different images, it talks about, you know, what the image is, how we marked it, didn't mark it as decorative, what we added. The second example here is an example of an image that's a data table, and we're like, hey, you know, this much information, you couldn't convey it in an alternative text. you should make it an actual data table, right? And then we talk about what decorative images are. So just as a quick summary of it, alternative text is the alternative text that appears and is read to someone who's blind using a screen reader, or anyone using a screen reader, or it's also there if an image doesn't load. That's what's displayed. And so for some reason, if an image doesn't load, the alternative text is there. The requirement is that the image alternative text, the text alternative for an image, should serve an equivalent purpose as the image. So I think about what's the purpose trying to show here, and maybe I'm trying to show the Jordan push off, this questionable call, was it a real push off or not? And so maybe, whoops, there we go. I hit enter on it instead of typing it in, but I can now come in here to my images with alternative text and see that Jordan push off. Jordan push off, put it in there, and I can just activate apply, and it's going to add that alt text to the image, right? And so it's very easy to do. It just shows you what the issue is, talks about why it matters, and then allows you to go edit it. So then I can move on to the next one. I've got Carl Malone shooting here. Carl Malone, I could just add that, apply it, and it moves it on and adds that alternative text right there. So we're actually adding the alternative text or whatever issue we're fixing right here to the rich text editor, applying it right to the image, or, maybe a suspicious alternative link. We've got in here some wording, click here, and we talk about why click here doesn't need to be in there. Or to view, I could just change that all to, the link text should just be 2021 season schedule, apply that. And now if you noticed up here in the text where it's highlighted, it just automatically applies that. So really the goal here on this part of the presentation was to show you what the accessibility guide is, how to activate it, where to find the resources in the accessibility guide, the overall resources on the question mark, about what the guide is, about what the icons mean. And then in each individual result, how to easily navigate around it, review the documentation, the little snippet, or go in deeper, and then into documentation, as well as showing you there might be links to custom resources that you have in here, and then showing you can very easily fix this issue. For example, this empty link, you can see it's kind of highlighted there. There's a link that got deleted, but some of it stayed there. The screen reader would still read that link. It would probably, even though that link was visually deleted, it's still there. The screen reader would either just read link, or it would actually read out that https://4k.popetech/. So we could just remove the link, and showing just it's easy to get in there and fix issues. At this point, that's as far as I'm going to go on the guide. We can come back around and talk about some of the other issues and stuff near the end of the call and why they matter for accessibility and how to fix them. But I'm going to open it up and see what questions we had right now and field those. And then we'll move to the dashboards. And like I said, then we can come back to the guide here in a minute.
So some folks actually started to address it in the chat, but there was a question of what is decorative? What does it mean?
Yeah.
What we consider decorative?
Yeah, so that's a great question. If I were ever on an image and I were curious on an image one, I can read about it and look in the examples what decorative is. But I mean, a decorative image would be one that adds no additional content to what's on the page, right? And so that image is just there serving a decorative purpose. In one of the other examples, I don't think I have it on this page, but they actually the instructor put on there like an image of like some squiggly stuff up at the top, right? That was purely 100% decorative, right? And so that one would clearly be marked as decorative. But a lot of other times, you might have an image in there that doesn't convey any new or additional information, that's just put in there for serving decorative purposes, and you mark that as decorative. I could get more into the weeds on some of that. There is always a level of subjectivity to some of that. Like, do I think as a content creator that this image should be marked as decorative? That if I were a blind user with you or someone else using a screen reader, I wouldn't necessarily need to know what this image has in it, and it doesn't lose any meaning on this page. So there is that level of subjectivity, but that's kind of in a quick example what decorative is. We can come back to that later on when we get through the dashboard and open it up for Q&A there, but hopefully that helps a little bit. But like I said, the easy example, and I probably should add it here, is a, some sort of like squiggly or something that's 100% purely decorative is an image. That one for sure, but then it starts getting into gray stuff. Perfect. Were there
yeah, one other question was, what if this is an art course and all the description was given in length and the image is just a visual representation of that? Do I have to repeat all that?
Yeah, so that's a great question about more of the nuanced stuff, and maybe subjective. It would really kind of depend if the image is, more fully it says that you have a text alternative, right? The text alternative doesn't necessarily have to be on the alt text for the image. It can be in the surrounding content on the page. So, getting in the weeds there, obviously a little bit of judgment, but a lot of times what people do in a situation like that is they'll just name the image, right? The name of the image or the image, what is called, like if you're hanging up in a museum, what the title of that image would be, and then they would have the description down below, maybe under a heading with that image, right? And so you don't have to try to describe everything in the image, but you are right. If the text in the body of the document conveys the same information, that does technically meet the requirement of serving an equivalent purpose. Again, getting a little bit more into the weeds on training on alt text, we have some great resources, just so you're aware. Let me just put this here, just blog.pope.tech. Each month we have a different focus topic. You can sign up for our newsletter to get them there. But we did go and get into and spend a whole month of topics on images. So links and text, alternative text, there we go. And so this one goes into a lot of weeds, and the alternative text in the wild, 5 alternative text examples is a great resource there. So perfect.
And then I just wanted to mention, because there was a question about whether PopeTech will provide a visual example of what a page is supposed to look like. For example, if I have an accessibility issue with lack of headers, will PopeTech provide me with a picture of what my page should look like? I would say that's a good resource for seeing examples, is where you're pointing us now, that blog.
Yeah, this blog is a great place to go check out different examples. We've got videos, we've got articles, we've gone really into depth on a lot of this stuff. So, feel free to check out our resources all the time. Excellent question. All right, is there anything else that's pressing, Jessica, you see? I do see there's some things about settings or activating it, but
yeah, we'll have to figure that out individually, but yeah, I think we're good to move on.
Perfect. We're going to go hit the dashboards here now. This checker, we launched it. People began immediately using it. But the first question they often asked is, okay, this is great for me to see one page at a time, but how do I see across all my courses? Or if I'm an admin, how do I see across all the instructors I'm responsible for? Or if I'm, instructor that has multiple courses, how do I see all my courses? And so, under courses, if I were an instructor and I'm in here under all the courses, if I were to activate that, I'm not going to save my changes. One of the first things here under all courses is there's an accessibility column here. And so you're able to view how many issues there are. So I could go into that Utah Jazz one and link that, and it's going to open up the accessibility dashboard. And so this is the dashboard that would provide a summary for that whole course. Not just that one page. That one page is that course intro page that we were just looking at. But now I have a list of all of my pages, how many errors and alerts there are. And I can now get a summary up here at the top, an overview of how many errors and alerts. And that PopeTech Accessibility is not, there we go. I can see the most common issues. This would be great for training and seeing what I need to work on. I also can see where my documents and videos are. Often documents and videos are ones that require a little bit more personal touch and a little more training, maybe more support from some of your accessibility professionals there on campus, your support team. So it's going to have a high level of just what that one course is. In addition to providing that high level, we also have the last scan widget. This tells me when content was last checked, right? Now it's set up in such a way that as you save edits and changes, as soon as I hit save, Canvas alerts us and we do the scan. And so usually within a few minutes, there's going to be a scan kicked off. But let's say you were like, hey, it looks like some of my content may have not made it into here, which sometimes might happen. It's pretty rare, but it could happen. Right under here, under missing course data, I can hit the rescan button. So if you noticed, I hit the rescan, it jumped it up to the top. It told me the course rescans queued successfully. The last scan widget in there, I can see when it was, and now it's going to tell me the progress of where any current scans are. And so if you do happen to wonder when was this last checked, you can see the last scan. If you do kick off a new scan manually by hitting that rescan button, which now is gone because we have a current active scan, I can come up here and see the progress, and I can hit the refresh to check the progress. Oh, that was weird. I'll have to check on that. It lost where the progress was in the queue. But anyway, I can also read documentation about what all of this means as well too. So you're able to go in here and see the last event, last scan, and syncing. Actually, what I think happened here is because I haven't made any changes, it looked at everything and said nothing's changed, so the last valid scan was still on that date. But we should update it to notify that. But anyway, I should have made some changes on that other page. But anyway, but yeah, you can track the progress of the scans there. And so at this high level on the dashboard, I can also drill into either here in the overview and go into here. I can see what different issues are. We have some additional documentation about what it means, why it matters, how to fix it. Additionally, I can go into the details and go see, okay, which content blocks had the empty links on it. It's all on that Utah Jazz page. And then I can go into that page detail. And from here, I could either view the code, which most people aren't doing. They're activating the editor and they're coming into here and it opens up the accessibility guide so I can just start working on it. So very quickly from the dashboard flow, you can start at that high level and drill all the way down and kick out to the accessibility guide. And again, I'm going to just activate my dashboard link here for that full course. I could choose to go down just into one page from right here as well too, and hit the edit button, and it activates that and opens up the accessibility guide. So it opens up the page in a new tab and opens up the guide ready for me to start editing content and fixing it. The instructors also have the My Dashboard view here in the header, where it's going to list not just one course, but all of the courses that they're assigned to. So in this instance, I'm assigned to 4 courses, and I can go see that. And I can go drill into it and now see the content blocks and go hit edit and go out there and start working on the accessibility on that page. And really the goal here is to give the high level view of where things are at, either by course or across all the courses, and then allowing the instructor to drill down into it. If you happen to need to send a report to someone about the results, maybe you want to keep accessibility on your radar, so you just want to choose one of your courses, set it up on a reoccurring basis down here, and get a report sent to me once a week of how I'm doing. I could just enter into my email address, send external person, and just put in there Mark at PopeTech and have that sent to me. And again, there's different report formats, just email ones. There's also exportable HTML, CSV, or PDFs. And you can get high-level summary data, or you can get even, hey, where is the actual issue in the code? That's what result detail is. Typically, course detail is the one that most people are generating if they're doing a more detailed report. But again, documentation here on the side of the dashboard opens it up here. If I'm in the dashboard down here section, I can read more about the report formats and types, or exporting and sending an email there. And so all of the documentation, again, is very easy to find just through the documentation link. And then you just choose if you want the accessibility guide or the dashboards. Excellent. So this is what the instructor gets. I'm going to show just very briefly some of the admin stuff. But before I do that, let's open it up and see what questions have questions come through.
Yes, so Joanna asked, forgive me if I missed it, but what does content block mean in that report?
Yeah, great question there. It's actually, we're using Canvas terminology. So I'm going back here. The content blocks are all of the different types of Canvas content that can be brought in, like pages, syllabus. It's the quiz description there. We don't actually get into the questions or the new quiz stuff, but like discussion topics. And so those are all considered in Canvas terminology content blocks. So they're like different pages on your course. But page has a specific name, right? And so we couldn't just go with page, but that's what content block means. So since we couldn't go with page like we do on websites, we just use the Canvas terminology that they'd already implemented for calling all these content blocks.
Thank you. And then the other kind of set of questions have to do with what PopeTech does and does not scan. So questions about, is it scanning everything in the course, including unused files, or is it only those items presented to the class? Similarly, people were asking if the pages aren't published, are they going to be scanned and appear in that area?
Yeah, great question. So if a course is enabled in our platform to be scanned, and all new courses are typically set to be enabled, it's going to scan it whether it's published or unpublished. And so it will scan all the courses. And when you hit save within a course, we're notified and we scan the new content blocks and information. So it should be up to date and always scanning whether published or unpublished on that first question. On the second one, what are we scanning? Well, if I were to go into a page here and hit edit, what we're scanning in here, that edit, there we go. So if we were to hit edit in here, if you notice what's in the content block here, this is what we're testing, this content that's inside the content block. So if you had, for example, a PowerPoint or an image or whatever, but you didn't put it in a content block on a page yet, we're not going to go find it and scan it. We're not going to show a list of where all the PDFs are that that haven't been actually put in a content block in one of those content areas that we test. It brings up another thing like videos. We will flag a video and say, hey, you have a video here. If you read its instructions, it'll say, go check it to make sure it's captioned correctly. So we don't test the captioning, but we do flag, hey, there's a video. The same thing for documents like PowerPoints, PDFs, Word docs. We're going to flag them and say, hey, you put a document in here, ensure that it is accessible. We don't scan inside of a document.
And then sort of related, I think this isn't a question, but a statement that Magda said is, a professor checks the PopeTech dashboard and notices that there are pages with errors. They realize that these pages are unpublished and they don't need them anymore. After they delete these pages, the same pages still show as errors, but they cannot do anything.
So if I'm understanding that question correctly, they're saying after a page has been deleted, there's still errors showing up for a page. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, submit that to your support team and they'll reach out to us and we'll take a look at that. I mean, it should be after a page is deleted. It should be purging them out of the dashboard. But sometimes Canvas Live Events doesn't always notify us of stuff, but we are always looking to optimize stuff like that. But let us know if something's not working right like that. We definitely want to review those and make sure that we're getting them set up right. But thank you.
Thanks. And then Karen, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just ran my PopeTech Accessibility because I wanted to see what popped up. And what pops up is I have one error that says it's a broken link. So I went to the page, and when I click on the page and the PopeTech Accessibility Guide at the bottom, it gives me no errors. So there's like a disconnect between the individual page and the overall accessibility checker. So I can't find where this broken link is that the dashboard is saying that I have, because the individual, or an empty link, because the individual page itself still shows that I have no errors. I don't know what to do.
I mean, again, submit that to your support team and they can submit it to us to be able to take a look at some of that. You know, those are two separate tools, and sometimes the caching on one's different. The accessibility guide does an immediate live check right there. So yeah, submit those. We're always happy to take a look and see what's going on and fix that. So if it's happening to you, it might be happening somewhere else, and we definitely want to resolve that. But thank you.
That was all the questions. So if you want to move on.
Excellent. Excellent. So if I were an instructor, that's what I get in the suite of tools. I get the accessibility guide to be able to find and fix issues on the fly. And then I get the dashboards for the reporting at the high level and going down, as well as the My Instructor dashboards. If I were an admin and I'm in admin and I'm viewing stuff, from admin, if I were to activate the accessibility, PopeTech Accessibility, it's going to load the full dashboard and bring it up. And this would be whatever permission level I have in Canvas is what it's going to show me. And so I'm going to have that, you know, across all the accounts and sub accounts. If you notice in here, it's got the same high level information that the other dashboards have, but now it would be for the full instance. In this instance, even at the root level, I only have 4 courses, so that's all it's showing. But I do have it broken out into a couple of sub accounts, so I can see differences by sub accounts. I can also go into the view all and do some comparisons between sub accounts. Well, that's the main one, but if I just wanted to kind of get a high level image of how 2 sub accounts are doing, this one doesn't have data in it, but I can see the difference. So there's features like that at the high level. And then as well for the admin dashboard, there is a graph over time, just kind of showing how things are trending within the semester across semesters. Now, like I mentioned before, whatever level of Canvas I'm in is where it's going to show the dashboard. So if I were in admin, and I go into my admin, looks like if I were to go into admin, I'm not seeing in here my, make sure I'm in the right one. Yeah, I think I changed something, but I'll just describe it. If I were to go into sub accounts and then just choose one sub account, and it's probably because I'm already in a sub account here and I forgot my flow, but if I were to go into a sub account and activate PopeTech Accessibility, I'd only see the dashboard for that sub account I was filtered into. So we follow the logical Canvas permissions, right? And so again, if I'm an admin with root level access, I'd be able to see everything. If I'm in a sub account, I would just see Canvas for the sub account I'm assigned to or the one I drill into. So the rest of the admin dashboard functions the same as the instructor one does, giving the high level reporting where I can go drill down into results, or I can drill down by course. I can also filter by term and pull up a different term if I needed to. But again, the drilling down process is the same that I showed you before. We're going to be able to view those different results and go see where the empty links are, and then go view the details on that course page, and then go view, you know, the actual where it's at in the accessibility guide and drill that down that way. Perfect. And again, the admin one does have the reporting functionality too, where you can set up report by course or by account and have them generated reports set on to be generated on a reoccurring basis, or even emailed to someone. If you don't have them emailed, they will be cached here at the bottom in the reports widget down there when they're created. Even if they are emailed, they'll be cached down there. So that's the high level for the admin dashboards. I've now kind of covered the PopeTech products in a nutshell and what they are and how they can help. What questions on the admin one or anything else? And then we can move over back to the guide and actually look at a few of the accessibility issues and go into them with time. So
no questions about the admin guide, but I did want to add that for the vast majority of people on this webinar, you're not admins. That's really just mostly a DE coordinator thing. So don't be alarmed if you don't see that area in your Canvas instance. It's mostly for DE coordinators and other Canvas admins.
Perfect. Perfect. Any other questions that have come up or things people are wondering about before we jump over and start chatting about some of these, you know, a little more in depth on some of these issues?
Yeah, Norma's asking, does PopeTech offer training for specific disciplines? Some of the demands, fly against the requirements needed, for example, in foreign languages. Assessments in the 4 skills, speaking, reading, writing, listening are needed. I don't think PopeTech offers any specific discipline training. Is that correct?
That's correct. We don't. Yeah. And so we focus more just kind of on the general broad accessibility training.
But we do, I will say that our district offers many, many webinars on accessibility where you could ask those kinds of questions.
Yeah, excellent question. Other questions? All right. Well, we still have some time left. And then Jessica, when did you want me to wrap this up for sure? So
11 o'clock, please.
11 o'clock. Excellent. Excellent. As I'm going there, I do see that Pat Patricio.
Yes. I was wondering how you deal with color.
Yeah, great question. Let's go ahead. We'll hit that. Let me actually, I did the wrong one. I was trying to multitask here, but so with color contrast, text against background, we do some checking on that. So let me not the auto saved. We want all of the errors in there. Excellent. So let's tackle what some of the issues are. Since you asked about text and contrast, we'll just kind of grab some of these issues in here and work off of them. So what we do in the contrast checking is we're actually taking a look at text against background. And so that's what we can automate in the testing. So we review what the color is, we look at the background, and using the contrast ratios, it's calculated, and we will populate a contrast ratio. Now, having good contrast ratio, right, is good for low-sighted users. It's good for certain disabilities, right? And actually, most people in general just prefer having good contrast anyway. This moving to Utah in this light yellow probably is hard to see. I mean, even I'm like that's not good contrast. And so the requirement for accessibility says for normal text, it's a 4.5 to 1 ratio is what it needs to be. So I'm showing here, you know, we can see normal text at AA, which is that 4.5 to 1. It is failing having that yellow to the white background. And so we can take this, and there's lots of ways of adjusting it. I like this slider here, so it's under the yellow color, and I can just begin adjusting it. If you notice as I do that, the contrast ratio on the side changes, and I can see it would be like this yellow mustardy color if I applied it. I don't like that color at all. Even though it now fits the contrast ratio, I can open up the color picker by activating that box, and I can just choose a new color in there that I can see, oh, that green there might be a better color that I'd prefer, and choose that and apply it, and now it just changes the color. So what we're testing on color is text to background color. Did that answer your question?
Thank
Perfect.
you. Yes.
And that was a great way of showing how an instructor even might use the contrast checker to find and fix an issue. And contrast, I tell people too, like with accessibility, there are, you know, you don't have to be like expert at everything, right? But if you know a few things, most of these things are generally good to know anyway, because like with that contrast one, it's just better now anyway for everyone. But let's take a look at heading structure. We'll take that one next, and we'll come back around to some of the others. If you notice here, here's a blue icon, the heading outline. If I activate that, I like opening up this one. I can see where they skipped heading levels, but if I go this heading outline, a lot of times, and I'm going to make a confession here, I probably shouldn't, but you know, I did all my education and training and everything. I was familiar with headings in like book chapters. And if I were writing a document, you know, I understood why headings mattered for different levels and where I was at based on, you know, chapters and subpoints and things like that within it. But when I first started working on websites, I would actually just grab different heading levels and throw them in because it was like bigger font, right? And so it's like throwing in H1 because it makes the font bigger. The problem with that for accessibility is if I were trying to navigate around, so if I were a person using a screen reader, which is often a blind person or low-sighted person, right? There's a couple of ways I navigate around a page and within the content on the page. One of the ways I navigate around it is by just jumping from heading level to heading level. Now that's very equivalent to somebody, a full-sighted person, right? Who's just looking at the page and looking at the different heading levels to kind of get an idea of what's on the page. And so having a good heading structure is good, obviously, for everyone, but the screen reader will read out heading level. It'll read like heading 1 and then say what it is. Now in Canvas, if you read the documentation here, we say provide clear, consistent heading structure. We also note that Canvas adds a header 1 for you as the page title. So whatever is up as the page title, course introduction here, is the H1. You don't have to worry about that one. So it's already letting them know that's H1. So you're going to start at H2 on the course and move in. So that's why if I go down here and look at the structure down here, I can see in the sidebar, the heading structure. I can see it starts on an H3. It says you're missing a level. You need to start that in an H2. So I just use the drop down and drop that, and I can hit apply. And now that one's changed, and that's now an H2. So it's starting out properly because I've got, my course introduction, H1, my course schedules, H2. I can also link on these. If I activate each one of these heading ones, I can jump down and it'll jump down and show me where the next heading level is. This allows me to go through and audit the heading levels. But let's go back to these skipped ones. And let's say this one needed to be an H3 for a good flow. So I apply that. Now, if you notice, I don't have any heading level alerts anymore because I haven't skipped any heading level, right? But I still serve up where the heading structure is. And why is that? Because like I said, having good heading structure is critical for accessibility. And that's where I was getting at, this is a suite of accessibility tools, not just an error checker. Now I can go in here if I were doing a deeper human review of it, and I'd be like, hey, okay, I'm not skipping any heading levels, but does this heading structure make logical sense? Utah Jazz history is another H2. New Orleans moving at New Orleans and the move to Utah Jazz under history. Yep, it belongs under there. Moving to Utah, the moving to Utah one belongs there. Sure. Heading number 3, Stockton and Malone. That's falling under the same level under H2, Utah Jazz history. Yeah, I do want a whole section on them. Right. And so I can go through and audit these and make sure I think the heading level is good, just like I'd look at the outline of my paper, maybe in a Word doc, opening up that outline tool on the side and reviewing those. And so again, it goes beyond just making sure there's no missing heading levels, but let's go ahead and take a look at the heading structure we did and say, if I were trying to navigate this page as a person using a screen reader, does this heading structure make sense to be able to guide me through that? Okay, I'm going to pause for a second, see what other questions there are, and we can go look at some of the other stuff as well too. But any questions that are coming in or anything?
Doesn't look like any additional questions. I was just putting in the chat, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed because you don't even know what the term heading means, or you're not even sure what alt text is, we have lots of intro to accessibility webinars that we offered in summer. You can check out those recordings, and we'll offer more in fall. So if you need some more kind of basics information before you dive too much into PopeTech, we do have resources available, and I put that link in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. Great. I'm glad you guys have and are doing that. I mean, most, sorry, my brain went 2 directions at once. So, but yeah, that's awesome. One of my recommendations too is don't be intimidated at the start, right? Just come in here. When I tell people, because we also work with people with websites, right? And in websites, it's actually even a little more challenging because this is often constricted to what you can create in the Canvas rich text editor here. And we're helping just supplement that. But on a website, people can add lots of stuff on there. But I always tell them, take a look at this, start with the red airs, look at the ones and see what are the easiest ones to understand. So for example, empty links here, right? What is an empty link? Well, an empty link is, normally a link is like right here. I'll take Sacramento Kings here, right? That's a link and it has good text here. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about good links here for a second, since I'm talking about it. But if I were now a screen reader, whatever is highlighted here is the link, whether it's just by a visual difference or being underlined, which is best practice here. See the Sacramento Kings. If I'm navigating as a screen reader, one way I navigate around is I'll tab from link to link. So I'll just hit tab and it'll jump to the next link, and it'll jump to the next link. And that's another way that I would navigate around the page. When it hits a link, it's going to read the what they say is the link label or the accessible name, which is whatever is in that link, right? So it's going to read Sacramento Kings link, Raul Lopez link, Memphis Grizzlies link, right? And so it's going to let me know it's a link and what that text is. So let's take a look at this empty link. I bet if you were to guess, what's it going to read? There's nothing in it. It's still just going to read link, or some screen readers will read what the link text is. And so it might read https //4k.pope.tech/ and it wouldn't read pope.tech, it'd actually spell it out, probably POPE.TECH/ and go and then say link, right? And that's complicated. Now, how do empty links happen? Well, empty links happen is because maybe I have a link in here and I've deleted it, but Canvas doesn't delete it all. There's still a link hanging out in there. And so the screen reader still hits it. And it just, a lot of times it happens just because you didn't get the whole link highlighted when you deleted it or something. But sometimes even when you do get it all, just the way the Canvas coding's working in the back end, it leaves that. And so it's still, even though you as a sighted person don't see a link there, it's still there and it's going to be read to the screen reader user. And so really the easy fix is either I need to add the link text back in, add link text, and I could type it in and just hit apply. In this instance, I just want to remove the link. So I just hit remove link. It's now gone. So easy links, a very easy one to start with. Adding alternative text to images, thinking if I couldn't see this image. Now we can get in the weeds on alternative text, but the basic idea of there's an image here. If I couldn't see the image, what's a short, succinct description I'd want to put in there? And add that. So those are some great ones to start with. Okay, let's open it up for some questions again and field those, and then I can hit maybe another result.
Yeah, Beth was asking, sorry if we already answered this. Can the checker go through a PDF or other document attached to a module?
Yeah, that's a great question. As of today, I just flagged those so you can see there's documents and videos like links to PDF, but I don't check inside of a PDF. We are doing a little bit of a PDF checker, but I do want to say this, even if you use the best industry PDF checkers out there, they're not going to find all the issues, and those are still going to be after reviewed using best PDF checking practices. And so, I would defer like how you want to handle PDFs for you to talk to your supervisors in that system there. But really with PDFs were awesome like 2 decades ago, or we thought they were anyway, because they're great for formatting content and stuff. But generally speaking, a lot of students, even my own kids, right, they're accessing course content on their phones. PDFs aren't good for mobile devices either. Generally, when I do trainings, I'm like, the first thing I say is, must it be a PDF? That's the first question I always ask about PDFs. If you can put that in the rich text editor here, it's way easier to check for accessibility, way easier to make accessible. You don't have to have, as much specialized training as you need to be able to create an accessible PDF. So, and if you do have a PDF, a lot of times having the same content in an alternative formats, a good gap in between. But a lot of times I'm like, if you have that, delete the PDF. But obviously there are things with PDFs, but that's the long answer. I was getting on my PDF bandwagon there a little bit. That is one of the things I feel passionate about, because I spent like a couple of years in a college as an undergrad student converting a bunch of things to PDFs. So I feel like I have to do penance now for like, let's let's not do PDFs unless they're absolutely necessary. And if they are, you need to have someone who knows PDF accessibility, review or create it for you. But again,
I'm in there, Mark.
yep.
Just based on some of the comments we're getting in the chat too, I just wanted to say, some of the questions that we're getting aren't really PopeTech specific, and that is the goal of this webinar is to learn about PopeTech rather than asking some of these more philosophical questions about whose responsibility accessibility is. But I did want to say, much like with the PDF stuff, if you have a class that has several PDFs, it can be really overwhelming to feel like you have to convert them all, right? But I would just say what we're trying to do here is a concerted effort. We're all trying to make a good faith effort to be as inclusive as we can for all of our students, including students who aren't sighted or have low vision or whatever it is. That's the goal of all of this work. So I would say, much like Mark said at the beginning, don't get overwhelmed, make a concerted effort, start slowly chipping away at making your content more accessible, converting some of those PDFs into Canvas pages, because they are in actuality easier for all students to access that way, not just students with visual impairments or other things like that. And like I said, we're just asking for a good faith effort. We're asking for some consideration into the needs of all of our students. So with that, I know we have 3 minutes left. Are there any quick questions that we can address? Any last minute things you'd like to see demonstrated in PopeTech? We got 3 minutes left. All right, well, we do have a second webinar next week on PopeTech. If you would like even more review on this, like I said, I'll send out the recording at the end, by the end of the day, probably in the next couple hours. And I'll also mark the VRC attendance. And the great thing about PopeTech is they have all those other resources in that blog area, and even within the PopeTech dashboard, all these resources to see, how we can start addressing some of the issues that are popping up. Yeah, and we're gonna be talking about more trainings in the future as well. So thank you all for joining. I know maybe not the most fun thing on a Friday that you had in mind, but I'm very grateful for all of you for trying and making an effort and being with us here today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Thanks for having me.